Hey guys, same outfit as last video because I literally just put the camera down for 1 second between filming these. But so today I'm going over my priority fantasy TBR. This is a video series I started more or less 1 year ago, in which I talk about what is my main priority in fantasy. Originally the idea was for the year to come, now the idea is for 6 months. And originally I put like 10 series on there, but when it comes to like just having it be a half yearly update, then 10 series is just way too much. And so last update I already made like exceptions and I put some sort of like standalones or first books in series on there, and that's also what I'm going to be doing now. So I'm going to be talking about 5, I think, fantasy book series or whatever that are my priorities going into the first half of 2023. And when it comes to how I did on my previous one, I don't know, I haven't rewatched it. I am going to pretend like I'm doing fine, but I also have definitely 2 carryovers to talk about here. And so these are 2 carryovers that are actually carryovers from the original video I did a year ago as well, but they are happening in 2023. They are scheduled into my reading live for the first half of the year, so you can be sure next time I'm filming this video they won't be on here anymore. First one to talk about is the First Law series by Joe Abercrombie. Now I did make some progress on this already, so I did read the first one since having filmed that first video, because it was part of my Project Zero TBR. So I have the physical book of The Blade itself by Joe Abercrombie, but I read that one and then I didn't have the sequels and I was still doing Project Zero TBR, so I didn't prioritize continuing. And to be fair, I did not love it as much as some people do, so I did not have that push into book 2 and 3. But the Catch-Up Book Club, which is a book club hosted by Becca from Becca and the Books, they will be tackling the First Law universe in 2023, moving into 2024. Now I don't make any sort of promises that I will continue past the First Law trilogy, so I'll be reading the first 3 books within his extended universe. Whether I will continue on after that or not depends on my experience with the first 3, and it might not necessarily be the case that if I enjoyed the first 3 that I will automatically continue. I might also just want a break at that point in time. So the First Law trilogy is a grimdark series in which we are following 3 different protagonists in the first book. We have Glokta, who is an inquisitor. He used to be this champion fighter, but he got caught during some sort of a war and was tortured to the extent where he is now living with a body that isn't fully functioning anymore. So we have disability representation coming through his character arc as well. Then we have the sort of like prime fighter of his day and age, who is taking part in a sort of like tournament. He isn't like the most motivated of students. He's also an asshole, but let's forget about that. And then the third one is a northerner, Logan Ninefingers, and to be fair, I've forgotten a lot about his story arc and what his goals and motivations were. The first book is very much just like vibes, so to speak, because there isn't much of an overarching plot, and then until you get to the ending, which then sets up book number 2. So I will not be rereading it. I've made that decision just like a few days ago because I just put so much into my January TBR that it was just starting to get overwhelming, and the one thing that I can most easily scratch from it is the Blade itself because I've already read it. So I will be looking for reviews online in order for me to continue on into Before They Are Hanged, the second book in the series, in March. Second series, which is a carryover from my previous priority fantasy update, is Live Ship Traders by Robin Hobb. So I read the Farseer trilogy 2 years ago, I think, at this point in time, and I absolutely adored it, so to speak, because I did have like an up and down road with it. I didn't love Assassin's Apprentice, I loved Royal Assassin, and then Assassin's Quest was also a little bit of a disappointment to some extent, but throughout there's like, I love the writing style of Robin Hobb and I love following these characters. Just sometimes it doesn't really work for me. Sometimes I feel like it's rushed, most of the time I feel like it's stretched out, and so I do definitely want to continue on with the Realm of the Elderlings. I think it has great potential for me as a reader, but they are really, really long books, and so I've just never been able to fit Ship of Magic into my TBR because I've never made it a priority basically. And so for the months of February April and June I will be reading the Life Ship Trader series by Robin Hobb. This is a separate series from the Farseer trilogy. We are following different characters in a different part of this world. So we are not continuing the story of Fitz that we started in the Farseer trilogy. In Life Ship Traders there are these boats that basically come alive if 3 generations of captains died aboard the ship, and I think we are following one of such boats which is about to come to life. I don't know more about it. I know that there's apparently a character that I will despise with all of my heart and a character I will change my mind about, I think. So I'm very much looking forward to reading these books, and I'm happy that I'm finally prioritizing them. Third series that I'm prioritizing is the Kushil series by Jacqueline Carey. So I am co-hosting the Kushil along. So this is a read-along for all 3 series within this extended universes, plus an extra book which is coming out. So we will be starting with Kushil's Dart, the first book in this series, in the months of January, February. I personally have put it on my January TBR. This is a very chunky book, but they kind of get a little bit shorter after that. And the only thing that I really know is that our protagonist is somebody who has been trained to be like a courtesan and an assassin, I believe. And that's all I know about it. I'm going into it without knowing too much. The only thing I know is that Jolene from Jolene Reads loves it, and we tend to disagree on certain series, but we've also found quite a few in which we agree on, so hopefully this will be another case of us getting along when it comes to which books are worth it. Fourth series that I'm prioritizing is not really a full series, but it is the first 3 books in Wars of Light and Shadow. So the first 3 books, I wouldn't even say the first 3 books, I'll say the first 2, because I've moved one of the books over into July to give myself a little bit more leeway in that first half of the year, because these are also humongous books. So this is a series by Jenny Woods, and I know nothing more about it. I have looked at the premise at some point in the past, but I've forgotten about it, and I'm not going to be re-looking into it. The reason why I want to read these is because I read the Empire trilogy by Jenny Wurst and Raymond E. Feist, and I absolutely love the Empire trilogy. I have never gone into Raymond E. Feist's other books which are linked to that same sort of universe. However, I've heard really bad things about the sexual assault scene in one of them, and about the response of a male character who's witnessing that, and so I don't actually want to go into that. But I do want to read more Jenny Wurst and see whether I like her other works as much as I enjoyed the Empire trilogy. I rated these only like 3 stars and 4 stars on Goodreads, but I rated them like years after first reading them, because when I read them I didn't have Goodreads yet. So they're definitely a series that stuck with me, and so I definitely think of it as much higher than a 3-star at this point in time. So those are the final full series that I'm going to be placing on here. In terms of my priority fantasy TBR, aside from those, I'm only going to be putting 1 book in, and that is actually the one that's going to be kind of like tentative, because there are a lot of new release fantasies that I'm going to get around to, or that I have already put on my TBR, and so the safe bet would be to mention any one of those. But I'm gonna put a stretch goal in here, and that is to read The Light of All That Falls by James Islington, the 3rd and final book in the Lycanius trilogy, because I need to, guys. I need to read this book before I forget about everything that happened in it. So ideally I get around to it quickly. However, as I said, my TBRs for the first half of the year are very full. I have a few that aren't full, but I also have plans for what to do with that time. So I don't know, it's difficult. There are so many things that I want to prioritize that would mean that Lycanius needs to take a step back, but then at the same time I know I need to read Lycanius as quickly as possible so that I won't have forgotten the things I found out in book number 2. So yeah, it's going on there. The Lycanius trilogy is a series in which we're following 3 friends who at the beginning of the book are in school together, magical school together. This world is a world that has seen a big conflict involving magical people in the past, And so there were these augurs who were basically people who kind of had foresight, and then the regular gifted people who had magical ability, and they use different sources for their magical power, but let's just not go into that. But so due to some sort of a conflict, the augurs were all killed off at one point in time, and rules were established about what gifted people are allowed to do. And these rules very much restrict what gifted people are able to do. They are definitely not allowed to harm non-gifted people, and the whole system has led to quite some discrimination of gifted people. But so these 3 gifted friends are at the onset of a sort of test that they need to take to prove that they've successfully mastered control over their powers, and if not, they will become shadows. However, one of the 3 is kind of struggling with his magical powers. They don't seem to be working for him the way that they should be. Things quickly spiral. There's a lot more to the story than that, but I won't go into that because that would just infinitely complicate people. But so I really enjoyed this one a whole lot, and with the second one, my main detriment to my enjoyment was the fact that I wasn't sure whether I'd forgotten too much or whether I was supposed to be unsure. So in that sense, I would absolutely need to pick this 3rd book up as quickly as possible to prevent that sort of doubt on my end. But so I don't know whether I'll be able to. But so these are the 5 things that I'm putting on my priority fantasy list for the first half of 2023. As mentioned, I will have more fantasy that will get read because I'm putting a lot of new releases on there as well. But so yeah, that is it for this video. Definitely let me know your thoughts on the series that I'll be picking up. Feel free to recommend something new to me as well. I cannot make any guarantees about when I'm getting around to it because there's just so much fantasy that I still want to get around to, and just way too little time for all these chunky, massive fantasy series. But so yeah, hope you guys enjoyed it, and see you guys for the next one. Bye!